thank you so much for joining us today. We are super excited to welcome you all to this exciting live roundtable discussion on demystifying the great resignation trend, Pitfalls to Avoid, which is exclusively curated by ETHR World and Sterling. My name is Soumya, and I'm going to be your host for today's session. There has been a lot of noise about the great resignation since last year. It is now time to address the nuances of this trend that is reshaping the workplaces and people policies. Today, we're going to delve a little more deeper on the proactive steps to ensure an upward trend in the people first culture, which will be built on the foundations of trust and safety. So without any further ado, I am super elated to welcome the dynamic panel of speakers for this intriguing and promising session. Welcoming Ekta Singh, CHRO, AGS Health, GV Prasad, CEO India and Head of APAC Fulfillment, Sterling, Manmeet Sandhu, Chief People Officer, PhonePe, who would be joining us very shortly, Rajorshi Ganguly, President and Global HR Head, Alchem Laboratories Limited, and Rajiv Nathani, CPO, Infogain. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. I hope you're all set for this discussion and really excited. So like I am, you can see that. And our audience is also really looking forward to it. But before I jump into this discussion, just wanted to apprise our audience that we have budgeted time in this session for your Q&A. So please keep a tab on it, keep sharing them on the Q&A tab here. I am going to try and take them during the course of discussion or at the end, but I promise to find all the answers for the things that you're looking for. So yes, now I'm not going to waste any minute and just moving into a very hard-hitting question, which I believe sets a good context for this discussion. A thought round that can lead us today turn attrition into attraction. And for this, I'm going to open it up to our panel of speakers and one nugget each. So let me start with GV first. GV, I'm coming to you on this one.
Sure, Soumya. I do think that there is an opportunity for turning this into an overall opportunity, provided the leaders like ourselves are ready to develop greater empathy with our employees and, more importantly, adapt our leadership style to meet those changing requirements. If you are able to do that, then I think this threat can surely turn into an opportunity.
That was a perfect nugget to kickstart the conversation. Thank you so much for that, GV. Ekta, I'm coming to you for your nugget on this one.
My nugget probably will be flexi work. Specifically, when I say flexi work, I'm talking not just about the hours, but also flexibility in the benefits that we give to our employees. It's no longer one size fits all. So that's what I would probably say, and definitely an opportunity.
Wow, that's a beautiful blow up. It's no longer work. It also talks about benefits, and that is great. And I'm going to come back on that. Thank you for that, Ekta. Rajiv, I'm coming to you.
Sure, thank you. So coming from the technology industry and really facing the heat of it, there are two elements. One is the extension of what Ekta said, is the radical flexibility in the times of today, coupled with the human-centered approach to while dealing with the employees. Again, going back with what GV said from an empathy perspective, that's where the human organization would really come from. These are the two perspectives. Thank you.
Great. Love that. Thank you so much for that, Rajiv. The diversity of this panel is, and somewhere the intent is just binding all of us together. That's so far I can sense. Rajorshi, I'm coming to you.
Yeah, thank you, Soumya. I think a nugget from my side, I think, the leaders obviously have to play a huge role in converting this attrition to attraction. I would like to put it on the 3 C's, which are very important. I think one is, how leaders can create clarity for the employees and for the team members. Clarity in everything, because people need simplicity, clarity on the way forward. Second is, how do you create that connect on a day-to-day basis with, connect with each and every employee, their families, the communication level. And third is overall care and support in terms of, everything, not just the physiological needs, but compensation, career growth. So if I have to put it in one nugget, how do you take care of the 3 C's? I think that would go a long way.
I agree. I absolutely agree on that, Rajarshi. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I hope the audience has taken down these nuggets. I'm going to go a little deeper on this conversation. And I have an insight that I wanted to share that an MIT Sloan study found that more innovative companies suffer from a high turnover as they demand more from their employees and a project sense of instability due to their cutting edge nature. I think this is one phenomenon that all of us have really witnessed in the last 2 years, where we were trying to make the ends meet, where we were trying to kind of ace on the innovation. And now it is time to turn this on our panel of speakers to know that how can people and business productivity be managed and harnessed? And who else better than Rajiv to take this question?
Sure, thank you. So first of all, it's a reality that the market we are operating in, I'm talking from a technology industry perspective, it's purely a talent market, right? And in a talent market, it brings in the challenges you rightly talked about from a overall employee retention as well as attraction perspective. That's the biggest issue we have. Now, what did trigger all of this? There's a backdrop to it. While the pandemic has a lot of credit for it, but there was increased adoption of technology, which was already happening, but it got accelerated with the pandemic scenario where almost across the industries, companies started leveraging the new edge digital technologies, cloud, and started modernizing their legacy technology, even going with the new edge technology work. And practically, if you look at the industry around, you'll find that almost every single company is a technology company today. Now, because of all this, what has really happened over a period of time in the last couple of years, there are new emerging skills which have become integral part of go-to-market strategy for the services organizations. Now, there's a lack of skills, which is putting a lot of challenge and pressure on companies in our kind of industry. Overall supply is not adequate, and hence gap in terms of demand and supply ratio. And it's very difficult to expect the freshers or young people coming in from the colleges to really ramp up faster to take on to the requirements, because in the old, typically in the previous decade, we were more focused on basic vanilla technologies like Java, .NET, etc. Now we talk about Kubernetes, we talk about cloud, we talk about AI, ML, and that's where the significant amount of change has happened. Now, because of this entire context and construct which has evolved, we have a difficulty in holding and attracting the talent, right? When you go in talent market, people have multiple choices. They can make what is best for them and pick that choice, and then let other companies wait for them and end up not joining them. So that's a typical behavior we see more in Indian market. But I have been increasingly seeing the talent attraction issue in other geographies where we operate, whether it's US, Eastern Europe, Europe market, even LATAM for that matter. Now that all has caused, and there is in terms of retention issue is also causing a lot of challenge there's a lot of churn which is happening and companies are struggling. Now this has created a problem of how do you deliver what you need to deliver to your customers from productivity perspective. Now, in my view, there are two ways through which you can tackle this entire context and situation. If you look at it from a people perspective, we talked about radical flexibility, right? In today's context, it should not be where the person is operating from. But what we need to look at from a radical flexibility perspective is in the context of remote working, a hybrid working model, the person can operate from any location. So it is not important what, when, and how. That's where the flexibility has to come in from. The second important thing in a talent kind of market is you need to offer competitive total rewards, so that your people don't get distracted due to the market pressure and situation. So this is overall competitive from a compensation as well as benefits perspective. And third is from a people point of view, they need to have the opportunities for continuous learning. Right now, everybody in our kind of industry understands that they need to continue to evolve themselves to remain relevant in the context of this market. If they do not, then they have problems. How do we create that environment and culture which is more learning culture? Now, from an employee perspective, I think three things where employer can pay, their focus attention. One is the employer brand, right? And that's a combination of talent, brand, social brand, leadership brand. These are the combination of things where they need to really focus a lot. Then the second important aspect where companies need to focus on is building the skills and competency based pool and capabilities. Just-in-time hiring will not resolve this problem. We are seeing there's a lot of pressure. The joining ratios in IT industries is around 50%, right? So for one single position, we are issuing 2 different offers. Now, hire, train, deploy is the approach instead of just-in-time hiring. So if you require a particular skill, which is N, then N-1, N-2, can you bring those people in, put them into a hire, train, deploy model, and create your pipeline from an overall development perspective. The third important thing is the leadership bench. Your leadership capabilities have evolved significantly. We are dealing with, for me, we have not gone back to a workplace for 2 years now. More than 50% of our people are new. They joined the organization in a virtual environment. They have not seen the office. They have not met people in person. So when you're dealing with those kind of people, your leadership and managerial level, and they need a different level of capabilities today. How can they? The biggest issue is the sense of belongingness. Practically, the job change happens with the change of laptop. Rest of the things remain the way it is, right? So that's where, how do we create the leadership bench strongly, build the capabilities which are really essential for them to be successful and ensure better sense of belongingness and stickiness for the employees in the company. And last in the context would be, how can you revisit your employer value proposition and bring in the differentiated EVP, which is baseline on 2 important principles. One is employee experience and second is being human organization. So these are some of the thoughts, Soumya, which possibly in my view would be the cornerstone in terms of dealing with this entire situation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that, Rajiv. And I love it that all of them started with an action verb. So there is a lot of things that are already there happening. Thank you so much. And yes, for our audience, Manmeet is here with us. Hi, Manmeet. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Soumya, and apologies for being late. We ran into some last minute urgent stuff that just needed to be done.
Absolutely. No worries. We've just kickstarted the discussion. I was taking the buy-in from Rajiv, and now I'm coming to you, Manmeet. A very important question in these times is that how can people and business productivity be managed and harnessed? So it is a superlative conversation that I'm looking forward, and I just wanted to hear your inputs as well.
So I was thinking about some of this stuff, how we are dealing with this issue of attrition and attraction, not something unique, of course. But I have found that one of the things that seems to work a lot, a little bit better than the others, is the extent to which we as an organization can be authentic about who we want to be, and then being able to communicate that culture and value very, very clearly to our stakeholders, both in terms of candidates that we wish to attract, as well as the people within the company that we wish to retain. From our perspective, one of the things that has become quite relevant is that we still think of ourselves as a startup, 2,500 people startup, but a startup still. And we do believe that we are driven by a mission. We are trying to do something. We are trying to change the world. We are trying to kind of cause positive disruption around us. So anyone who's coming in has to be bought into the mission of the organization, because the other stuff, the money and the title, is relatively easy to replicate. It's just somebody giving you 20%, 30% more. But the sense of the mission of the organization and what an individual can contribute to make that succeed, I think, is the one differentiator that would be really hard to replicate. And the other thing about it is that it is unique to me. Other organizations have other missions that are probably as authentic to themselves as possible. But when I go out and say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do, and this is the kind of people I want to help me be able to build that out, and this is what I offer in return, the person coming in to do this work also thinks of it as fun. It is not a drudgery. It is not something that somebody else is asking them to kind of contribute to. But it's a sense of their own mission. It's a sense of their own value that they can contribute. And I don't have to ask folks to spend long hours or whatever. People manage their lives. They have the flexibility. but they are also super passionate about what they're doing and therefore excited about it. I found that if we, however, try to do it the other way around, where I try to be this perfect organization, I'm going to be the Google of India, or I'm going to be the Facebook of India, whatever else, that doesn't stick because the person coming in is expecting that. And they come in and they find that it's a completely different set of problems, a completely different set of consumers that we are dealing with. And so it doesn't stick. We always will lose some people who will leave because of money or title. But I think if we can be a lot more authentic about the kind of organization we are trying to build, likelihood of retention and actually getting the right people is a lot higher.
Thank you for that, Manvi. Thank you so much. I think being authentic, being communicative, and I really like that idea where you are highlighting that, it has to be something that you embrace the mission. And that's going to be unique in its own way. So that's a beautiful, roadmap ahead. Thank you so much. That brings me to another, and while I was kind of prepping up for this session, just for our audience, I was trying to, extract all those facts, data points that I could highlight in this conversation and take these learnings from this amazing panel of speakers. So that brings me to the next question, and that's going to be for Ekta. Ekta, Forbes has stated that 2 of the main reasons that some people leave their jobs are based on issues with leadership and communication. So how can people leaders avoid these pitfalls? It's going to be amazing if we get to hear from you.
So, of course, very, very interesting question, and the right one as well in today's context of the conversation we are having. In my view, I prefer to give you an answer in 3 segments. So the first one I would say is people. So right hand at the right place, right? So what I mean by that is making sure that our people leaders, our frontline managers, what we have realized during, thanks to COVID, like we said, or working from home scenario for the last 2 years, is not everybody is cut out to be a people manager. Right? When you're in office, there's a lot of meat and physical conversation, interaction, and therefore many things kind of get into the bhaichara, what is called in Hindi, a lot of brotherhood conversation. However, in remote, that is not there. So what we in my organization have done is we've come up with what we call the people profile, which basically means for being a frontline manager, there are certain competencies that we look at. Layman's language, there are certain skills that we are looking. For example, you don't want to put someone who's uncomfortable in having a conversation start, right? And you throw them into becoming a people manager just because they've been in the organization for a certain period of time, disqualifies them. So tenure no longer is the applicable factor to promote somebody, right? It's more of these people skill. For example, if you're working in a remote environment, sometimes that empathy, I remember Rajiv bringing that up, right? The empathy is very important. I keep telling employees in my company that when you ask the question of how are you, don't abuse it. Pause for a second. Wait to listen what the other individual is, having to tell you, because in today's environment, I doubt if any one of us sitting here today and our, members listening can say, hey, I've met one person that hasn't suffered in this last 2 years. I doubt it, right? Not a Zen moment, but I'm practically saying. So that's my number one, right? So you make sure that you have the right people in the right job. The second I would say is invest in naturally training the frontline leaders. Forget those days of, goal setting and giving difficult feedback. Forget it. I think today you should have conversations on how do you build empathy? How do you make sure that you can have critical thinking skills, situational leadership? Today, someone is, unwell. How do I still extract work from somebody else and still meet my deadline, right? So being able to juggle, etc. And the third big thing, I think, in part of the communication strategy is the sense of community building. We've really done very well. It could be as simple a thing as a hobby club, but people are coming together. Like we've got a Zumba club and it's the most, sought after. We have to say, hey, we've run out of the number of people that can join this club, right? Or it could be for parents and children. Coaching and mentoring. A senior parent may be giving coaching and advice to a young mom or a young dad. So we're coming up with this community, and what it does is when you break away from that community, you'll think twice before leaving an organization because you've got a support system in this form. When I went through during the pandemic, I actually lost my father, my own example, and I joined a community for mental well-being. I have received so much support from people who've been through similar situation. Even though I'm the CHRO, it doesn't matter. There, I'm just Ekta Singh and I'm just seeking, support. And therefore, I'll think twice before I have to leave an organization of this sorts. So culture plays a massive, massive, role in making sure that you stay back just as much as a manager does. In culture, I'm going to go back. If you remember the first conversation I had mentioned, right, that mental wellness is well-being in total is important. I think what's also important is to customize the benefit the way we would want. For example, if it is a young mother, you may want to give benefits of, hey, she's obviously going to go and shop for items for the baby. Why not give her some subsidies? Let's say it's somebody who is in the age range and wants to be focused on physical well-being. Why not give subscriptions for, health clubs, gym memberships, etc. So we've no longer saying that all benefits are applicable for all. Now we're giving it like a basket of benefits. You choose what you want, you leave what you don't want. So that's the way I think, we need to do. Focus a lot on frontline managers, in my view. Focus on transparent communication. If you say, I'm going to be with you at 6 p.m., you make sure whatever happens, you are there at 6 p.m. Otherwise, don't make a commitment. Otherwise, this generation doesn't forgive you for a commitment lost. That's how I'd put it.
That's very, very conducive. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ekta. There have been a lot of learnings and very heartfelt. So thank you. Thank you for that. That really brings me to the next leg of this, conversation and the topic while we were curating, that what are those pitfalls to avoid? And one of these, I would say, insights that we got from the community, I will just come on and, highlight that. As we are stepping into yet another year of great uncertainty, leaders, and especially when I say leaders, I mean the people leaders, have to take into account the cost of bad hires and create a mechanism to reduce it. This is something which is really causing a huge impact. So background and identity verification helps in creating a people-first culture. That's the one part of it, build on the foundations of trust and safety. And these words really mean a lot today as we discuss and take cognizance of what has gone by for all of us. So I would love to, hear from GV first on that. How can leaders act as catalysts to this change? And it's a huge change that I'm talking about, GV.
Absolutely, Soumya. It is a huge change. And first and foremost, thanks a lot. I think the last 10 minutes have been very, very informative. I think very, very great nuggets of information which has come through. Going back to your question, Soumya, you're absolutely right. I think we live right now in a world where it's not easy to attract talent. And the last thing that we want to do is end up having bad hires or having too many bad hires, which becomes a challenge for any organization, whether it is in terms of cultural fit, whether it's in terms of progressing the way we want to progress, or the entire flexibility or adaptability factor that we are talking about. My experience tells me that while background screening may not be the solution for everything, but it is a very, very significant tool if used effectively to help you to first and foremost get people who are trustworthy and genuine. And the other thing is to get people who have the right background and the right skill sets. And I think those four things are probably the core for actually having any type of foundation laid from a leadership perspective. So when we look at the type of background screening solutions that are generally offered, a lot of them revolve around ensuring that is the person really what they say. Okay. We interestingly joke that you pick up a CV of a candidate, more often than not, you feel everyone is a candidate for a CEO level, because that's what the CV tag talks about. Okay. So going in and actually fleshing out the details to say, hey, what genuinely this individual is, what is it that he or she has really done, becomes a very, very critical aspect. In today's world, when people are working remotely, people can be, on net and on web most of the times. Are the people genuinely what they are? Are they residing at the place? Are they really the person who's giving even interview for you? Is that person the real person? Or is it that somebody else actually did a pseudo for you, basically, also? So to that extent, I think right from establishing the identity of the person, establishing whether the credibility of the person is genuine becomes important. And I think the other important tool is about going back and checking on their education, checking on things like their past employment. Very, very interestingly, no longer do you go back and just take one reference from maybe the earlier supervisor or so. You want to take a 360-degree feedback about any individual, just like you'll do for people who are working in your organization. So you want to go back and talk to a cross-section of peers, cross-section of maybe supervisors, cross-section of actually people whom this individual led, to try and get the type of inputs that you need. And I think if one is able to do that, you at least can be comfortable that a person who's come on board as a leader is probably the right person. And then it is obviously for your organization, very similar to what Ekta mentioned and Rajiv and other mentioned, that you need to then work with them so that they can adapt to your culture and then work with a common sense of purpose. So I would say that it's a great challenge. And I personally do feel that the background screening can be a big and good effective tool on that particular front. Thanks, Soumya.
Thank you so much, Jivi. Thanks a lot. Rajoshi, I'm coming to you. And I would love to hear from you. I mean, Jivi did set a very good context and very, very pertinent points came forward. Just looking forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, thank you, Soumya. I think GV covered most of the things. I think, we all know we sometimes don't know the cost of bad hires because, we all know, the cost of bad hires can be, we are unable to even ascertain that, and depends on at which level you are hiring. At senior level, obviously it can go berserk. So what's important, I think, while I'll come to the need for background and identity verification, which is absolutely necessary when, especially you are doing mass hiring and, at all levels. I think what's also important where I see leaders playing a catalyst role is, the time that we give to the whole recruitment process. Very often, most organizations, and we are in a hurry, somehow get a person to fill the job. I think that's where I think, many times you see the HR function are under pressure from, the different business functions, and they also commit that mistake of somehow getting the person in place. That's everybody's KRA today. I think that's where I think it all starts, and people have to understand the importance of the whole recruitment process. They should be trained also. People just feel, everybody is good in terms of interviewing. So it actually has to start from the interviewing process itself. How are you carefully selecting? How are you spending time ascertaining whether the candidate is a real fit? And are we even training the leaders? I think, because how do you interview? How do you ask the right question? How do you ascertain the fit? I think it's not just a common sense or, anybody can do it. It's a science and an art both. So I think it has to start from there. And, leaders at all level, and especially those who are at a higher level, they have to ask these questions to people below them. It's not just about HR asking, what are they doing to raise the quality of hiring? Because it's not just about bad hiring, it's also raising the bar on the quality of hiring. From what kind of companies you are hiring? Are you checking about the stability of the person? Are you checking about the education and, the kind of stint the person has, had, or the experience had? So background and identity verification is today, I think, almost all organizations they are doing, and it's a good process. What, let's say, we also follow, and I'm sure many of them here also follows, is we also do a lot of independent reference checks. It's not about the references just given by the candidate. We make sure that at least at a certain level and above, we have 2 to 3 people that we talk to who are not referred by the candidate, because inevitably when the candidate refers, they're going to talk good about the person. So we make sure we do that. We also involve sometimes leaders or the manager under whom the person will work to also find out through his or her network. So collectively then, we take a call whether the person really kind of checks all these boxes from a stability, the kind of background the person is coming, how has been the whole interaction process? Was the person seen by 2-3 people? So there are various factors which goes in, and I think that's where the leaders will have to play a huge role in even supporting the recruitment function and HR function, because it's not about how fast you fill the job. It's about the right person getting into the job. I think that's the leaders have to understand.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Hiroshi. And before I move to the next question, there's one question from the audience that's very, very pertinent at the moment. So Kuldeep is asking us that what is your opinion on assessment tests to identify the right candidates for the job? And since we are in this question, I think I would love to hear it from GV first.
Sure. So I think assessment tests, perform a slightly different role. So I think what the background screening tests tend to do is more to establish the identity, the credibility of the person, confirming their past education and employment history and everything. I think the assessment test is something which should be actually a complementary test besides the background, because that probably gets you more deeper in terms of assessing the mindset of the individual. And more importantly, depending the type of role for which you're hiring, to see whether that person is the right fit from that particular perspective. So I would say that it should actually be a combination of effective screening with proper assessment tests, depending on the type of role you're hiring for.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, GV. Kuldeep, I hope you found your answer. I'm going to move ahead on this discussion and would be really happy to hear it from our panel here. And I would really go about it that, should organizations be reevaluating their future orientation given the new world of work? I know there is a lot of echo about this term. And if yes, if you feel yes, then what are those factors? Maybe we can list down 2 factors each should be considered so that our systems are geared towards ensuring a retained and a happy workplace. And let me start with Manmeet first.
Thank you, Soumya. And this is the kind of question that I think is keeping us all very, very engaged and involved at this point in time. The way I look at it is that what the current world order does is that it allows us to think about our talent in a lot more diverse ways than we've been used to thinking about it. As we look at the future of work, the thing to remember is that every employee doesn't have the same need. The employee group is not a homogeneous group of people who all require the same thing. Everyone doesn't need to be working from home all the time. Everyone doesn't need the most amount of money to get stuff done. Everyone isn't worked up by the idea of a mission and a vision that sort of needs to take things forward. So I think what organizations may need to do is to think a little bit more deeply about what kind of roles require what kind of talent, and then be able to provide maybe more of a customized approach in looking at various talent sets. For example, you may have a set of people who need to be very deeply involved in figuring out what the path forward for the organization is. They may need to very deeply figure out what kind of problems the organization might need to focus on, and then also work towards solving those problems by working very closely by a bunch of other people. This set of people would probably be very excited about coming in every day to work and engaging and interacting with folks and being passionately excited by the idea of getting this stuff done. You may also have a workforce where the priorities in life are different, where being able to balance work and life might be more important. There might be things that they simply do not have the time and energy for at this point in time, and they just need a job that can sustain them and ensure that they are positively and productively engaged. And for that said, having a higher degree of flexibility in terms of how much time they spent at work, which remote location they might be working from, etc., can be factored in. Then there is the component of the large young workforce that we have who are still trying to figure out what they really want out of their lives and what kind of long-term careers that they're looking for. There is that expectation of going after your passion while also being able to sort of manage their day-to-day life on an ongoing basis. For that said, maybe some sort of a hybrid solution that allows both to be balanced while they figure out what is important for them might also be needed. So I think this particular world has kind of gotten us face to face with the idea that it's not a one solution fits all. There will need to be a lot more customization than we've been used to up until now. And we don't need to get worked up with the idea of, oh, everything is going to be remote or everyone must come in necessarily to the office. Different people will have different needs. And I think the success of organizations of the future will depend on their ability to meet these needs to the highest degree of customization of folks that they want to attract and retain.
Great. Thank you, Manmeet. I really loved it that different people will have different needs and your success will depend, or the sustainability. I think we no longer talk about success now. I'll take it back. We talk about the sustainability and acing that will depend on your ability to customize. It's a very, very solid point made there. Thank you so much. I'm coming to Rajiv now. Rajiv, what will your take be on this?
I think Manmeet said it all. I'll actually put it in a 3x3 grid. So we all know that the future working model is going to be hybrid working model. Depending upon industries, the degree at which the hybrid model will work may vary. But the fact of the matter is, in our kind of industry, technology industry, customer also is one of the key stakeholders. So how do we strike the right balance between the talent needs and the customer needs will be very essential as number one point. Now, within customer context, there may be three possibilities, right? And that's why I'm calling it 3x3, because whether it is customer, whether it is talent, whether it is a nature of role, all of these will have 3x3 contexts. So number one is customer may be flexible, allowing people to work from wherever they would like to work from, right? That's one potential possibility. The second could be the customer is fine for certain roles with that flexibility, but not fine for certain roles, right? And third situation could be customer may say that, okay, no, I want everybody to be together because I have a potential security risk associated to my IP, or it could be related to the overall productivity perception, which has actually got clarified over a period of time now. Nobody talks about it, but just for this argument's sake, let's think that's also one possible scenario. Now, these are three contexts from a customer point of view. Now, there are three contexts from employees' point of view as well. One is that somebody who has gone to their hometown. So, for example, we did some survey few months back, and we figured out 52% of our population has gone to remote locations. During this fiscal year, we have hired people from 330 cities across India. So we have people working from 330 cities, whereas we have offices in 5 cities in India with a headcount of 4,600 people, but they are spread across 330 cities across India is one data point. Now, with that kind of context, I don't expect these 52% people to relocate back to those base cities where we have offices, right? So that's one context where people may not be comfortable relocating from their hometown locations. The second kind of perspective would be people who are in the same city as the offices. They may be comfortable coming to office on a flexibility basis, right? And that's where the radical flexibility thing will come to play. It's about the choices people need to make. And third is that people are dying to come back to office, and that population will always be very marginal minority population. And then third is the roles, right? Certain roles you're comfortable, they can be across any location, it doesn't matter. Those could be back office roles, those could be operational roles, but then there are roles which require a lot of collaboration, right? So it's very difficult for you to actually let these people operate in a very distributed environment. Now, this is where the entire, in IT industry I'm talking about, and I don't want to be generalized from across industries perspective, that's where the balance will work out. And that's where also across generational perspective, the needs have actually got clarified across the generations. We can't say that only Gen Y or Gen Z will operate in a particular manner. I don't think that's the context right now. The context is, as Manmeet was talking about, very customized, but will evolve under this 3x3 grid in my view. That's how I see the future. Back to you, Soumya.
Great. Thanks, Rajiv. I think the audience will definitely connect with you offline, this 3x3 grid. We really want to know more. So thank you. Thank you for putting that out. Ekta, I'm coming to you. You mentioned it that, kind of set the stage for it, that one size fit approach doesn't work anymore, and would love to hear from you now.
Right. So let me diverse my thoughts also a wee bit in this response. Manmeet and Rajiv have literally covered quite a lot of ground. Let me say things that are different. Of course, in my view, number one will be the hybrid working, especially the hybrid onboarding model, right? With, like Rajiv said, 52% of his employees are working in locations that they are not, probably minus the 5 cities, right? Chances are if we ran a survey, we pretty much would find similar data. Thankfully, we aren't doing that because we want to give the individual and the employees the flexibility that they require at this point. But hybrid onboarding is the need of the hour, that I would say. The second, I would say, probably from our learning tools as well, let it be a catalog-based learning, like you have, your Netflix and Amazon Primes. If you go and watch a type, it will give you a recommendation of what should be the next watch. So that's one way of looking at the future. The second, I would say, is the virtual immersion platforms. We've been able to use these immersion platforms, not just for the 3D tour of an office, which I joined while the pandemic was going on in this organization, not just for that, but also for your team connects. These virtual 3Ds do a lot of things. For our learning, for example, we are in the healthcare and the anatomy class. I'll give you just one example. Now, it would take a facilitator 4 hours to train about what is, brain and how does it function. Vis-a-vis with this tool, all you have to do is download the app and just scan the skeleton, right? And you can then learn at your pace what you want to learn, much lesser a time than the 4 hours. Plus, because it is audio, visual, and interactive, the learning is much faster. And the generation that we are now catering to, the new age, that's trying to figure out what they want, you're talking to them in their language because they all know technology. They all know, we're making assumptions here, but it's a fact. They are much more, better with technology than you and I perhaps are. Last but not the least, I think I'm going to give a lot of emphasis on communication. In organizations, gone are those archaic days of, I will send an email or I will even do a video, for example. I think today the employees want to share ideas, they want to share opinions, they want to share their views. And is there a platform in your organizations that allows such kind of two-way communication to happen? Very, very critical. Something like a workplace by FB or a sociable. There are many out there, but you need to evaluate what works for you. The idea is communication has to be a two-way street or a multi-way street. Even if one person is posting an idea, can everybody contribute to it? It also, by the way, what we fail to realize it many times is you can make that into a really good database of FAQs. Questions that are previously answered, click here and you can search from those set of questions rather than recreating the same wheel or answering the same questions. Last but not the least, HR tends to spend a lot of their time in answering questions that can easily be found on our intranets, like policy related question, process related question, program related questions. These can easily be automated. You could use a chatbot for it and it can literally do the conversation. One example I'll give for you all, and with that I'll pause, is we introduced in our organization something called Mood Meter. So we ask our employees every, end of every week on a Friday, we say, how are you feeling today? We have gone past the fact that HR never asked feel questions, right? So we ask now, how are you feeling? And the answers can be happy, elated, angry, sad, upset. Basis that, you will not believe the amount of data you can actually gather. What you could look at the back end is it one supervisor whose all direct reportees are saying they're angry or upset this week? Or did something specifically happen for an employee to respond in that manner? So there's a lot of intel we can draw just by asking a simple question and seeking the response back from that. By the way, in my organization, happy and elated are 87% of people. So I think we're doing something good.
Absolutely, Ekta. That's commendable. So you're doing a lot many things good, not just something. So that's really fab. And kudos on that. Thank you so much. This Moodo meter, that's a great idea. I think audience, you can take a note of it and we can all do it for our own teams. This really works. Thank you. Rajarshi, I'm coming to you now.
So I think, my co-panelists have already covered a lot of ground. So that leaves a little bit for me only. See, this whole, new ways of working or new world of work has to be also seen from, specific context or the industry that we operate. For example, I'm in a very brick and mortar kind of a industry where, the hybrid work doesn't work really, unless only maybe for a very small percentage of workforce who comes to, let's say, office. If let's say, and therefore I'll answer my question, and of course all the points covered by them are very, very relevant, but you'll have to also understand when you are addressing a question of a happy workplace and a retained workplace, how do you really make it so? So for example, we have a huge number, almost 70% of my workforce in my company, they are feet on street. They are present in almost 700 towns and cities of the country. So for them, it's not about hybrid work. They have to go out every day morning, meet the doctors, detail out the products, go to different stockists, etc. So the worldview from their side, how do you make them happy is, it has to be a mix of several things, how the manager interaction is happening, how the day-to-day conversations are happening, how am I enabling their day-to-day working, which is making them feel that, my resources are there, and I'm able to execute my work sitting thousands of kilometers away from the headquarters or the head office, because that person is a one-man army or a two-man army. He hardly sees his manager for days together. So how do you create that conducive atmosphere? How do you give him or her the tools and ammunitions to make him productive on the ground? How do you address the query of the person? How do you make the work simple for the person? When that person reaches out for some help to his manager or the nearest office, how promptly are you able to give him or her those kind of responses? I think those are important, and is the person really earning the sales incentive? Because that will make the person feel good about it. Is the person able to move forward in the career? For example, one thing that we track is what percentage of our managerial population we are able to move internally, and we do that through our assessment center. Internally, we have always taken a target of 70%, because when people see they are moving up the career, they have a hope in the company. Ekta has already and others have addressed these learning needs. So for example, we ensure that you don't need to come every day or every month to a certain learning center and get yourself trained. So, we have introduced something called Alkepedia. So it's anytime, anywhere learning. You are anywhere, you keep getting updates, you learn at your own pace, versus a pre-pandemic model where, you had to come to a central place. So several things that you have to do to make the person feel connected, happy, make his or her day-to-day life very simple and rewarding and fulfilled for that person. If you look at the manufacturing, which also has a huge workforce for hour, they don't have a hybrid model. They have to come to office. Otherwise, you and me will not get medicines out there in the pharmacy store. They cannot operate machines from home. So how do you make that person, learn new technology? How do you make that person feel very safe at work? So, you have to look at the employee cohort and try to figure out things which can make the person happy. Of course, few things which run common, as I would again reiterate, is how are you giving that person a clarity about work day to day and the future? Is the person able to see the future? How you are connecting them? I think the importance of communication and connect has come out from everyone. And the last is overall care, in terms of career growth, learning, prompt reward and recognition, feedback. I think gone are the days where people would like to wait for a year-end appraisal. They would like to instantly know, if I have done something, how do I feel about how have I done it? Yeah. So I think it's a mix of all this, which will probably, we are all experimenting with it, and somewhere we will figure out an answer.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that, Rajarshi. That really helps. And yes, we are in this together, still figuring it out, but we hope to reach somewhere, and we will. So thank you. GV, I'm going to come to you just for the closing words on this, and then we're going to move to the audience Q&A. It's really buzzing at the moment.
Sure. Never easy to comment or be the last person to comment on the question. But according to me, just to put it in a nutshell, I think there are three things which would never go out of fashion. And I think it's very, very important in today's date. First is, how do you make your employees feel valued? And I think there's a constant need for the organization to orient towards that particular direction. The second thing is that how do people feel that they are learning? If they feel that they are learning in the organization, they're growing in the organization, I think that becomes a catalyst in itself. And the third element, according to me, is a sense of belonging. And that sense of belonging can only come when there's a sense of purpose. I think Manmeet touched upon it, or the fact that, okay, we are here to revolutionize things. So is every person working in your organization able to identify that and work on it? So if we are able to look towards orienting our company to work around making the employees feel more valued, have a sense of belonging and learning, I think we'll be making great strides. And probably a few things to do on that particular front is, first and foremost, listen. I think we need to listen much more. It was much more easier to listen or figure out what people have in their mind when you were in office, when you were face to face, because there's a lot of things, right? There's body language, there's expressions. Nowadays, many times you're on Zoom, many times people have network issues. So you're having conversations without even seeing. So the ability to be able to listen to people and understand what's going on is critical. So that's going to be important. The second thing is involving. I think no matter whether people are from Gen X or whatever Gen, I think they want to be part and parcel of going along and working on a solution together. So the more you can include people, I think the better it would be for any organization. And the third thing is, I think some of the policies and other things need to change. So I love what Ekta mentioned about not having standard set of practices or policies which apply to everyone. Probably there is different policies depending on the individual, the department, maybe the type of role that person is performing. So I think if one is able to adapt towards it, then you meet the desired consequences or results, basically. So that's a few cents from my side, Sonia.
Yeah. Very valid. Thank you. Thank you so much, GV, for that. And yes, just keeping an eye on it. We have about 8 minutes, and I'll try and capture most of those questions. In fact, our panel has already given you a lot of insights, a lot of action points rather, and that's how we started this discussion. So I hope that's there. A very interesting question has come for us, and this is a little futuristic, if I would say. Any insights on the great negotiation strategy after the great resignation? And it's open to the panel, so anybody, please feel free to take it.
I can make an attempt. I think the great negotiation strategy always existed, right? Basically, so I'm not very, very specific and sure, but yeah, surely, I think there'll be more elements of what an individual might want when they are probably changing their jobs or wanting to join. So I think we touched on things, right? They might be expecting more flexibility. They might be expecting your policies to be in line with what they are wanting. So probably if the earlier part of the negotiation, when anyone was picking up the job, if it was mostly about the role, the title, and the compensation, I think that's always going to be there, but it's going to be much more than that. So I think that's where probably employers need to be flexible and see in terms of how to deal with those. And some will probably fit the bill. And in some cases, you probably have to amicably understand and agree that they're probably not the right fit for your organization.
Absolutely. GV, thank you so much. And that brings me to the point that Manmeet made, that you have to embrace the mission in a way, and that will just make you stand out. So that negotiation bit definitely gets covered here. Thank you so much. I'm going to quickly move to the next question, and this would be like one each. And you can just take reference from your your particular industry or the experience that you're having. What are the challenges industry is facing in attracting the right talent? And please feel free, anybody can go first.
I can actually take that.
Yes, Rajiv.
Sure, thank you. So for us, the biggest challenge is finding the right candidate, and then after having found the right candidate, ensuring that he or she joins the organization, and then also successfully assimilates with the organization to remain part of the overall ecosystem. That's the biggest challenge we see today for us.
Wow, thanks for that, Rajiv. That was really nice. Ekta, would you want to go next? Just stopping one challenge that's more like that's something that's keeping our leaders awake, I would say now.
Yeah, I think I'll take that one step forward, finding the right candidate, definitely, like Rajiv said, but having them join us. I mean, I keep referring to the whole recruitment process these days as the dating and the marriage process. How you date different people, but then, hey, you only marry one. And the thing is that candidate willing to marry you if you're willing to marry that candidate? It's all about that. What keeps me awake is how many are going to show up on the Monday morning. That's what keeps me awake. We give offers. I think it was, Rajiv and GV who was sharing that for one job, we give 2 offers. I mean, that's the industry we are all living, irrespective of whether it's technology, whether it's healthcare. I think we are all in the same boat. We're giving out more offers. And people are in India, in some ways, I also think this is an unethical practice of taking an offer and then going and literally shopping, right? That's my biggest challenge, because they take the offer and sometimes you can read that this candidate will do it. Now, the bigger question is, as an organization, what's your call? Are you willing to? Are you not willing to? Right? That's my big challenge. And from an employer point of view, I think I'm seeing a lot of employees that are willing to take offers and abscond from their prior employment, right? And come join us because obviously, or whichever organization gives them a better offer. Now, to me, that's very unethical. I wouldn't, trust a person like that. I would have difficulty doing it. Now, as an organization, my ethics and the organization ethics, does it match? Are we willing to take the risk? Because you want people yesterday, not today, not tomorrow. We all needed someone to join us yesterday. So those are the dilemmas that I think I'm fighting.
That's really hard hitting. Thank you so much for that, Ekta. And I have a question just for you. On the mood meter, could you please suggest the name of the app that is used across your organization? So Pratap wants to know that.
Absolutely. We use State of Mind. So you could go to them and you can say Ekta sent us, and I'm confident they'll be very happy with me as well. I'll negotiate some discounts in that manner.
Wow. Thank you for that, Ekta. Pratap, I hope you've taken the note, and I'm coming to Manmeet now.
See, I always find this very interesting that on the one hand, all of us are having this big conversation about attrition and attraction and all of that. And yet every day when I open my LinkedIn account, I will have innumerable number of people saying, hey, I need a job, I want a job, I'd like to be connected. I think maybe as an industry, we have some responsibility and love to be able to figure out how we do more of this, of really figuring out how more of the talent that is reaching out can be made more ready for the roles that we have in the company. We all seem to be going after the same 10, 20% of the talent, while there is this big wide funnel, 80% of people in this country who have a tremendous talent, but who just haven't been groomed and trained in the right ways. And with a little bit of effort would be a lot more available and ready to sort of be a part of all of us. So for me, the big challenge is really, how do you actually leverage the immense amount of productive talent that exists in this country, which will help solve the supply chain challenge that all of us are facing, and also help the organization, the company and the country be a lot more productive and a lot more successful. So that's the one that I'd love to sort of work more on, figure out what more we can do in this space. We've made very, very small changes, a long way to go. And I look to inspiration for companies like Infosys and Wipros of the old, who had actually put in a whole lot of effort working with colleges, working down the supply chain to figure out how it can be solved. And I feel like it's that time again in this country where we maybe look at this a lot more.
Thank you so much, Manmeet. Hope we do. And GV, I won't come to you last this time. Just coming you before Rajorshi. So please, one quick take on that.
Thank you, Soumya. I appreciate that. So overall, according to me, it's about, I think the biggest challenge we are facing is figuring out or getting people who are flexible and adaptable, getting the right mix, especially at leadership levels, or people who are probably strategic, but at the same time are ready to get their hands dirty and do work. And I think it partly goes back to the fact that many people, because they are probably scouting at different places, just feel that they're having these interactions and they can probably get the most easiest job and the highest paid job. And I think that's probably going to be the biggest challenge that we need to deal with.
Thank you so much for that, GV. Just couldn't have agreed more. Rajorshi, I'm coming to you now. Just a quick
Yeah.
take.
Sure. So I think, the challenges that I continue to face is one about in an industry like ours, where we deal with cutting edge science. Sometimes we find deficiency of talent in several areas, and and even if we find they are not industry ready, I think that's a challenge. So therefore, how do the education should really kind of keep pace with the developments in the world of science and technology, and kind of churn out students who can join the industry ready. And the second challenge I personally see is a great level of instability in career. People switching jobs every 1 year, 2 year, and their learning is very shallow. So you really don't get the good candidate always. The people are making money because people have choices, the economy is offering, but that's not really generating a good set of talent. And the last is there are still ethical issues of people taking offers, sitting on it, ditching at the last moment. So those continue.
So those continue. Thank you, Rajarshi. I think that was a great sum up. I would want to tell all our panelists today that this has been one of the most vivacious sessions that I have recently seen. Like I said, the Q&A tab has gone beyond 45. That's really amazing. A big thank you to our audience also, because you guys do give us a lot of direction, a lot of insight. So thank you so much. Now we've run out of time, and I have a request to make to all our audience. If we haven't managed to take your questions today, please feel free to connect with our speakers offline, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer them. So thank you once again. I want to say a heartfelt thank you to this exciting panel, GV, Manmeet, Rajiv, Rajarshi, Ekta. It was amazing. I really enjoyed every second of this conversation. So many notes that I've taken. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Soumya, for being a great moderator, and it has been a very, very enriching session. Thank you.